Jamal woke up to the familiar sound of Shepherd barking from the backyard. The soft morning sunlight streamed through the window, casting a golden hue over his tidy little room. The cheerful chirping of birds outside made the morning even more vibrant. Jamal smiled, quickly got dressed, and ran outside, where Shepherd was already waiting, wagging his tail enthusiastically. Shepherd wasn't just a dog. He was Jamal's closest friend. The family had raised Shepherd since he was a tiny puppy, and from then on, he had been by Jamal's side through every moment. Shepherd was not only intelligent but also had a warm heart. He always knew how to comfort Jamal when he was down and share in the small joys of life. Today was no different. "Are you ready, Shepherd?" Jamal asked, holding up the familiar rubber ball. Shepherd barked loudly. His bright eyes sang, "Let's go." The pair quickly headed to the nearby park. The park was Jamal's favorite place, with its lush green grass stretching endlessly and tall trees providing cool shade. It was like a small paradise in the town. Jamal threw the ball as far as he could, and Shepherd dashed off with unbelievable speed to retrieve it. Returning proudly, Jamal laughed. "Good boy, Shepherd," he said, patting the dog's head. Shepherd wagged his tail furiously, barking joyfully. Their carefree laughter filled the air, blending with the sounds of nature. Passers-by in the park smiled as they saw Jamal and Shepherd. They were used to the sight of the black boy and his loyal Shepherd playing together every morning. However, Jamal didn't notice that from a distance. A pair of eyes were watching him with an unfriendly gaze. Officer Tucker, a patrol officer in the area, stood by his squad car, staring at Jamal and Shepherd. His mind was immediately clouded by baseless prejudices. To Tucker, Shepherd was no longer just a playful dog with his owner. He was a potential threat. Tucker was no stranger to prejudice. Growing up in a conservative family, he had been taught to always be wary of those who are different. Even as an adult and a police officer, those lessons had deeply ingrained themselves in his thinking. Seeing Jamal, a young black boy, playing with Shepherd, a large, strong-looking dog, triggered all those ingrained biases. "Can't afford to be careless," Tucker muttered under his breath, tightening his grip on the belt where his holstered gun rested. Jamal, oblivious to Tucker's presence, continued throwing the ball for Shepherd, laughing as the dog rolled on the grass, trying to catch the ball in his mouth. Shepherd was Jamal's whole world. He had shared all his secrets with the dog, his joys, his fears, and even his dreams for the future. Meanwhile, Tucker began walking toward them, his movements rigid, his eyes locked on Shepherd. When Shepherd turned around and barked a friendly greeting, Tucker immediately reached for the gun at his hip, misinterpreting the gesture as a threat. "Is there something wrong with this dog?" Tucker asked coldly, his voice sharp. Jamal spun around, startled. "No, sir. Shepherd is very gentle. He's just playing." But Tucker wasn't listening. In his mind, every movement Shepherd made was a potential danger. Shepherd, unaware of the tension radiating from Tucker, wagged his tail cheerfully and started walking closer to greet him. To Shepherd, this was just another human, perhaps someone who might throw the ball. "Keep that dog back," Tucker barked, raising his voice as he pulled his gun from its holster. Jamal's face turned pale. "No, please. Shepherd just wants to say hello. He won't hurt anyone." But Tucker wasn't hearing Jamal. His fear and prejudice had taken over, clouding his judgment. Time seemed to slow. Shepherd took another step forward, and in Tucker's eyes, the situation became even more dangerous. He tightened his grip on the trigger, and a deafening gunshot echoed through the park. Jamal screamed, "No!" Shepherd collapsed onto the ground, letting out a faint whimper before falling silent. Jamal ran toward Shepherd, tears streaming down his face. He knelt beside the dog, his hands trembling as he touched Shepherd's soft fur, now stained with blood. "No, Shepherd. Please get up. Please." Jamal sobbed. People in the park rushed over. Some quickly called for emergency services. while others shouted angrily at Tucker. "What were you thinking?" an older man yelled. "It was just a harmless dog," a woman cried out in frustration. Tucker, looking around in confusion, tried to defend himself. "I was just following protocol. The dog seemed dangerous. I had to protect myself." But his explanation convinced no one. The furious stares of the crowd bore down on him, and he took a few steps back. But the people weren't letting it go. "We all saw it. You had no reason to shoot," a young man shouted. Amid the commotion, Marcus, Jamal's father, arrived as the chief of police. He had been called to handle the incident. But when he saw Shepherd lying motionless and his son holding the dog, crying uncontrollably, his heart broke. "Jamal, are you okay?" Marcus hurried over, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Jamal looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "Dad, Shepherd. He shot Shepherd." Marcus turned to Tucker. "Tucker, what happened here?" His voice was cold, his anger barely contained. Tucker stammered. I was just following protocol." The dog looked aggressive. "Looked aggressive?" Marcus repeated, his gaze sharp as a blade. "You didn't think it was necessary to verify before you fired?" Tucker was at a loss for words, struggling to respond. But Marcus wasn't interested in excuses. He turned back to Jamal, gently pulling his son into a hug. "I'll handle this, Jamal. I promise." Shepherd was quickly rushed to a veterinary hospital. Jamal's family waited anxiously, their hearts heavy with worry. Meanwhile, the story of the fateful gunshot spread like wildfire throughout the town, igniting outrage and heated debates. The sound of the ambulance siren pierced through the quiet of the park. Shepherd was gently placed onto a stretcher, his brown and white fur stained red with blood. Jamal knelt beside him, holding Shepherd's paw tightly, tears streaming down his face. He couldn't believe this was happening. Shepherd, his best friend, now lay motionless, breathing faintly. The scene moved everyone around them. A woman standing nearby pulled out her phone and recorded the entire incident. Her video quickly spread across social media, accompanied by captions filled with outrage. "A police officer shoots an innocent dog because of prejudice." Meanwhile, Marcus, Jamal's father, tried to maintain control of the situation. He understood that this event would affect not just his family but also send shockwaves through the entire town. As the police chief, he had to uphold his duty, but as a father, he couldn't forgive what had happened to his son. Marcus turned to Tucker, who stood awkwardly by his patrol car, his face flushed with guilt. "You'll have to explain everything during the internal investigation," Marcus said sternly. "This is not a small matter." Tucker nodded silently, knowing he had made a grave mistake. Jamal watched the ambulance drive away, his eyes red and swollen. "Dad, will Shepherd be okay?" he asked, his voice breaking. Marcus knelt down and placed a comforting hand on his son's shoulder. "I don't know, Jamal, but I promise I'll do everything I can to save Shepherd." Jamal nodded, but his heart was heavy. Shepherd wasn't just a dog. He was family, the only friend who always understood and loved Jamal unconditionally. The thought of losing Shepherd was unbearable. At the veterinary hospital, Shepherd was rushed into surgery. Dr. Collins, an older veterinarian, examined the wound and shook her head. "We'll do everything we can, but Shepherd will need a lot of luck." Jamal and his family waited in the hallway, the air thick with tension. Time moved agonizingly slowly, each second feeling like an hour. Jamal never took his eyes off the operating room door, clutching his mother's hand tightly. Meanwhile, back at the police station, Marcus convened an emergency meeting. He demanded a full account of the incident from Tucker. Tucker tried to defend his actions, but his explanation lacked credibility. "You let your prejudice cloud your judgment," Marcus said, his gaze sharp and unwavering. "Your actions didn't just hurt a child. They've undermined the trust this community places in us." The next morning, the video capturing Tucker shooting Shepherd had gone viral across social media. Local news outlets covered the incident extensively, accompanied by furious comments from the public. Headlines like, "A police officer's racial prejudice hurts a family," flooded the internet, igniting outrage within the community. Outside the police station, a crowd had gathered in protest, holding signs that read, "Justice for Shepherd," and "End violence fueled by prejudice." Marcus watched the scene from his office window, his heart heavy. As police chief, he knew he needed to issue an official statement to calm public anger. But as a father, he couldn't shake the pain of seeing his son suffer. At home, Jamal couldn't stop thinking about Shepherd. He was unable to focus on anything, staring blankly at Shepherd's empty bed in the corner of his room. The image of Shepherd lying motionless on the grass played over and over in his mind, bringing fresh tears to his eyes. Jamal's mother, Evelyn, sat beside him and wrapped him in her arms. "Jamal, I know you're hurting," she said softly, "but Shepherd is a strong fighter. He's not going to give up." "But what if Shepherd doesn't make it, Mom?" Jamal asked, his voice choked with emotion. Evelyn looked into her son's eyes, trying to remain calm. "We can't control everything, my love, but we can hold on to hope. Trust Shepherd, okay?" Jamal nodded, though his heart was still weighed down by worry. That afternoon, Marcus came home after a long day of handling the pressure. He saw Jamal sitting by the window, his eyes filled with sadness. Marcus approached him and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Jamal, I have some good news," Marcus said. "Shepherd has made it through the critical stage. Dr. Collins said he'll need time to recover, but he's going to be okay." Jamal's eyes lit up. "Really, Dad? Shepherd is going to live?" Marcus smiled and nodded. "Yes, son, but he'll need our care to get better." Jamal jumped up and hugged his father tightly. For the first time since yesterday, a smile spread across his face. "I'll take care of Shepherd. I'll do everything I can to help him get better." But even the joy of Shepherd's recovery couldn't erase the lingering pain from the incident. Jamal knew the bullet wasn't just aimed at Shepherd. It symbolized a much larger problem in society, one he didn't fully understand yet but felt deeply in his heart. Marcus understood this too. As police chief, he realized this wasn't just an isolated incident. It was an opportunity to address systemic issues of justice and equality, and he was determined not to let this moment pass without taking meaningful action. News of the incident quickly spread across the town and beyond, sparking an unprecedented wave of outrage. At the town square, dozens of people gathered, holding signs that read, "Justice for Shepherd," and "Don't let prejudice destroy our community." Jamal's neighborhood, known for its diversity of Black, white, and immigrant families living together in harmony, was now confronting the stark reality that long-standing prejudices simmering beneath the surface needed to be addressed. An older man, Mr. Peterson, a white former police officer, stood on a high step, holding a microphone. He had known Marcus, Jamal's father, for many years and admired how he led the police department with fairness and integrity. "This isn't just about a dog," Peterson said, his voice deep and resonant. "This is about how we treat one another. Shepherd was not a threat. Jamal was not a threat. We need to change." The crowd erupted in applause. Several others took turns speaking through a megaphone, sharing personal stories of discrimination they had experienced. The number of protesters swelled, creating an atmosphere that was both tense and resolute. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to the police station after a long day, met by curious and wary glances from his colleagues. As police chief, he understood the precarious position he was in. On one hand, he needed to maintain unity within the department. On the other, he could not ignore the wrongful actions of one of his officers. Marcus called an emergency meeting with all the officers in the department. Standing before them, clutching a clipboard tightly, his gaze was sharp but burdened. "We cannot let this incident be forgotten," he began. Officer Tucker's actions were not just a personal mistake. They reflect a deeper issue. I need everyone to understand this. Our duty is to protect and serve all people, regardless of their skin color, religion, or anything else. Some officers nodded in agreement, but there were others whose expressions betrayed hesitation. Marcus knew that changing deeply ingrained attitudes within the system would not be easy, but he was determined to start here, the school. The story of Jamal and Shepherd became a topic in every conversation. Jamal's classmates, who adored Shepherd, organized a fundraiser to help Jamal's family cover Shepherd's medical bills. Hallways were adorned with drawings of Shepherd accompanied by the slogan, "A warrior never gives up." Though still grieving, Jamal felt the overwhelming support of those around him. He began to realize that his story was not just a personal pain but a source of inspiration for others. Jamal started to think about how he could contribute to making a bigger change. In the operating room, Shepherd lay motionless, his breathing faint. Dr. Collins, with more than 30 years of experience, was fully focused. The gunshot wounds not only caused significant damage to Shepherd's body but also made the surgery more complicated. Collins understood that this was not just about saving a dog. It was about preserving the hope of a young boy. Shepherd endured hours of intense surgery. Dr. Collins and her team of nurses worked tirelessly to treat the wounds and stabilize Shepherd's condition. Every faint heartbeat on the monitor kept the entire team on edge. Outside the operating room, Jamal sat beside his mother, clutching Shepherd's collar, which he had removed before the surgery. He whispered prayers, hoping with all his heart that Shepherd would pull through. "You have to believe, Jamal," his mother said softly but firmly. "Shepherd has always been strong. He won't give up." Several hours later, the door to the operating room swung open. Dr. Collins stepped out, her face showing both exhaustion and a glimmer of hope. "Shepherd has made it through the critical stage," she said in a calm but clear voice. "But he'll need time to recover. You're very lucky, he's a real fighter." Jamal sprang to his feet, throwing his arms around his mother. Tears of joy streamed down his face. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. Shepherd was moved to the recovery room. Every day, Jamal visited him, bringing along his favorite toys and sharing stories about school and the support they were receiving from everyone. Though still weak, Shepherd occasionally managed to wag his tail or lift his head to look at Jamal, as if to say he missed him too. "We're going to get through this, Shepherd," Jamal said, gently stroking Shepherd's head. "You'll get better, and we'll play in the park again, just like before." While Shepherd was recovering, the investigation into Officer Tucker's actions officially began. The police department invited an independent investigation team to ensure fairness and transparency. Witnesses from the park were called to provide statements, and the video capturing the incident became critical evidence. Tucker, now facing the possibility of suspension, found himself under increasing pressure. He was required to attend numerous interrogations and deal with criticism from both his colleagues and the community. During one of the interrogations, Tucker stated, "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I thought I was doing the right thing." But the investigators were not convinced. One of them responded, "You allowed fear and prejudice to cloud your judgment. This not only harmed Shepherd but also damaged the trust of the community." Marcus recognized that this was the moment to implement systemic changes. He proposed organizing cultural awareness and emotional management training sessions for all officers in the department. Additionally, he requested the establishment of an independent oversight board to address cases of misconduct and abuse of power. "I cannot let this happen again," Marcus stated during a press conference. "We must hold ourselves accountable, not only to the community but also to our own conscience." Meanwhile, Jamal decided to join the movement advocating for justice for Shepherd. He wrote a heartfelt letter to the police department, recounting his bond with Shepherd, their friendship, and the pain he had endured. Jamal's letter quickly went viral, appearing in major news outlets and touching the hearts of thousands. "My dog isn't just a pet," Jamal wrote. "He is family, my best friend." And I hope no one else has to go through this pain because of prejudice. Tucker sat alone in the interrogation room at the police station, the harsh white light from the overhead lamp illuminating his weary face. He stared blankly at the file in front of him, which detailed every witness statement and piece of evidence condemning his actions. Each line felt like a fresh reminder of the mistake he had made. Yet what haunted him the most was the image of Jamal in the park, clutching Shepherd with tear-filled eyes, the pain etched deep into the boy's face. That evening, Tucker returned to his small apartment, a space filled with stark white walls and a worn-out chair. He slumped into the seat, his gaze empty. Memories from his past began to flood back. Tucker had grown up in a small town where racial prejudice was commonplace. His father, a conservative veteran, often spoke about threats he believed came from people different from himself. Those words gradually took root in Tucker's young mind. The school. His lack of interaction with peers from other ethnic backgrounds ensured those biases were never challenged or changed. When Tucker joined the police force as an adult, he carried those misguided beliefs with him, although he would never openly admit to being prejudiced. Deep down, he felt an instinctive wariness toward those who were not like him. It was this underlying bias that had led to his grave mistake in the park that day. Unable to bear the torment of his thoughts, Tucker decided to reach out to an old friend. Jason, a former police officer, had left the force to work for a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting equality and justice. Jason greeted Tucker with a stern but empathetic look. "Tucker, I know you. You're not a bad person, but you let fear and prejudice dictate your actions." Tucker sighed heavily. "I don't know how to make things right. Everyone hates me. I don't think I can stay in this job anymore." Jason sat down across from him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Making things right doesn't mean running away. It's about facing the truth and choosing to change. You made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you can't learn and become a better person." Jason's words struck a chord with Tucker. He realized he couldn't undo the harm he had caused, but he could take steps to make amends, not just for the community but also for the guilt that weighed so heavily on his own soul. While Tucker wrestled with his inner turmoil, Jamal's family was also working to move past the ordeal. Shepherd had regained consciousness after surgery, but its health remained fragile. Jamal spent most of his time by Shepherd's side, caring for it with love and hope. One evening, the family gathered around the dinner table. The meal was simple: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and greens, but the warmth of their togetherness helped ease the sadness in their hearts. Marcus looked at his wife and children, feeling grateful that they had remained united despite the challenges they faced. "We're not going to let this break our family," Marcus said, breaking the silence. "Shepherd is still here with us. He's a fighter, and so are we." Jamal looked up, his eyes shining with determination. "I know, Dad. I want Shepherd to get better so he can run in the park again. But I also want to do something so no one else has to go through what I did." Marcus smiled, proud of his son. "Do you have something in mind?" "I want to tell Shepherd's story," Jamal said firmly. "If people understand how much pain prejudice can cause, they might be willing to change." Evelyn, Jamal's mother, nodded in agreement. "That's a wonderful idea, Jamal. I believe your story will touch many hearts." Marcus didn't stop at supporting his son's efforts. He decided to use his position to push for meaningful changes within the police force. He reached out to organizations specializing in cultural awareness and emotional intelligence training, inviting them to host workshops for the entire department. "I won't let the actions of one person tarnish the reputation of our department," Marcus said during a meeting with his officers. "We need to do better. We need to be the kind of force people can trust." One day, as Jamal was tending to Shepherd, there was a knock at their door. Evelyn opened it to find a group of community members standing outside, each holding a small gift. They brought food, toys for Shepherd, and kind words of encouragement. An elderly woman spoke up. "We want you to know that we stand with your family. Shepherd has shown us that even small acts of love can change the world." Jamal was so moved he couldn't find the words to speak. He realized he wasn't alone in this journey. His community, filled with people of different races and backgrounds, had come together for a common cause: to eliminate prejudice and build a better future. Shepherd was out of danger, but its journey to recovery was far from easy. Every day, Jamal visited Shepherd at the veterinary hospital, bringing along its favorite toy, a worn-out rubber ball. Shepherd was too weak to lift its head, but when it saw Jamal, its eyes lit up with a familiar spark, as if to say, "We'll get through this together." Shepherd was under the meticulous care of Dr. Collins and her dedicated team of nurses. They monitored its heartbeat and breathing closely, ensuring there were no complications. The bullet wound had been treated, but Shepherd still needed a long time to fully recover. Jamal never missed a single day by Shepherd's side. He read books to it, shared stories about what was happening at school, and even placed a small chair beside its bed so he could sleep next to it at night. "We'll be back at the park soon, Shepherd," Jamal said, gently stroking the dog's soft fur. "You just have to hold on a little longer." Shepherd couldn't reply, but its eyes seemed to say it all. The love and trust between Jamal and Shepherd were the greatest motivators for the dog to keep fighting. Dr. Collins frequently reminded the family that Shepherd needed time and careful attention. But Jamal never wavered. He learned how to administer injections, how to gently massage Shepherd to make it more comfortable, and even the smallest tasks, like cleaning its fur or coaxing it to take medicine, were done with all the love in his heart. "Son, Shepherd is healing because of you," Evelyn said, watching Jamal work tirelessly. "I can't leave it alone, Mom. Shepherd was always there for me when I needed it. Now it's my turn to be there for it," Jamal replied, his voice firm with determination. After weeks of care, Shepherd began showing signs of recovery. One morning, when Jamal arrived for his visit, he saw Shepherd trying to lift its head and wag its tail faintly. Jamal nearly cried with joy. "Dr. Collins!" Shepherd lifted its head. Jamal shouted excitedly. Dr. Collins smiled warmly. "That's a very good sign, Jamal. Shepherd is getting stronger, thanks to your love." As Shepherd continued to recover, public outrage remained fervent. Jamal and Shepherd's story had spread across national media. Articles and news features about the incident were constantly published, calling for systemic changes in how issues related to bias and violence were handled within the legal framework. All over the town, both large and small protests took place. People carried signs reading, "Justice for Shepherd," and "End violence fueled by prejudice." Activists for equality from various nonprofit organizations also joined the cause, turning the event into a movement that resonated nationwide. Though still young, Jamal could feel the weight of the attention surrounding him. Letters and messages began pouring in from strangers, filled with words of encouragement from across the globe. Some sent toys for Shepherd, while others donated money to support Jamal's family. But not all responses were positive. Some, burdened by their own prejudices, criticized Jamal's family for blowing the situation out of proportion. They claimed Tucker was simply doing his duty and did not deserve the backlash. These negative remarks deepened Marcus and Evelyn's concerns. As the police chief, Marcus recognized that his responsibility extended beyond internal investigations. He needed to take tangible actions to restore calm and trust within the community. He organized a major press conference, inviting journalists and activists to attend. "I understand the anger in our community, and it is justified," Marcus said before the cameras. "But I promise this will not be swept under the rug. We will make the necessary reforms to ensure that everyone is treated fairly and with humanity." Marcus's commitment received widespread support, but he knew that actions, not words, were what truly mattered. He began drafting plans to reform the police department, from organizing cultural sensitivity training to establishing an independent oversight committee. One evening, Jamal sat at his desk, his pencil trembling in his hand. He decided to write a heartfelt letter to the town. sharing his story about Shepherd, their extraordinary bond, and the pain he had endured. "My dog is not a dangerous animal," Jamal wrote. "Shepherd is my friend. He has been there for me when I was sad and when I was happy. I hope our story will make people rethink how we see and treat one another." Jamal's letter was soon published in newspapers and spread across social media, touching the hearts of millions. His story became a symbol of love, courage, and perseverance. Jamal and Shepherd's story extended far beyond their town, capturing the nation's attention. Major media outlets like CNN, BBC, and the New York Times covered the story, highlighting its profound human significance. Celebrities, from artists to politicians, expressed their support and called for an end to prejudice. Shepherd, with his miraculous recovery, became a symbol of the fight for justice. A documentary filmmaker reached out to Jamal's family to create a short film about their journey. Initially hesitant, Jamal agreed when he saw Shepherd wagging his tail happily during the filming process. The film aired on national television, moving millions of viewers. Images of Shepherd lying in his hospital bed with eyes full of determination, and Jamal steadfastly by his side, touched countless hearts. The town held a special event to honor Shepherd and Jamal's family. At the park where the incident occurred, a bronze plaque was erected, engraved with an image of Shepherd and the words, "Never give up hope." Jamal gave a speech to the gathered crowd. Despite his young age, he spoke with sincerity and a surprising level of maturity. "Shepherd taught me that no matter how hard things get, we should never give up. I hope our story inspires everyone to love and respect one another." The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus stood quietly by Jamal's side, his heart swelling with pride for his son. As Jamal and Shepherd's story continued to spread, Tucker lived in torment. Each day, he was met with hostile stares from those around him. The criticism and even threats were relentless, making him feel isolated, as though the entire world had turned its back on him. One day, Tucker received a letter from Marcus. In it, Marcus invited Tucker to his home for a conversation. The letter didn't specify the reason, but the tone was serious. Tucker hesitated at first but eventually decided to go. That evening, Tucker stood at Marcus's front door, his heart pounding. He knocked, and Marcus himself opened the door. "Come in," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. Inside the living room, Jamal was sitting on the couch with Shepherd lying next to him. Although Shepherd had recovered significantly, it was still weak and unable to move as freely as before. Jamal looked at Tucker, his eyes filled with tension. "I asked you here for a reason," Marcus said, pointing to the chair opposite Jamal. "Jamal wants to talk to you." Tucker blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected the boy to want to face him after everything that had happened. Slowly, he sat down, his hands clenched tightly on his knees. Jamal took a deep breath before speaking. "Why?" he asked, his voice small but full of emotion. "Why did you shoot Shepherd? He didn't do anything wrong." Tucker lowered his head, shame welling up inside him. I don't know what to say. I let fear and prejudice control me. I was wrong." "You don't know what Shepherd means to me," Jamal said, his voice trembling. "He's not just a dog. He's family. He's my best friend." Jamal's words pierced Tucker's heart. He nodded, his eyes beginning to fill with tears. "I'm sorry, Jamal. No apology can undo what I've done. But I promise you, I will change." Jamal looked at Tucker, sensing the sincerity in his words. "I don't want you to just apologize," he said. "I want you to do something so no one else has to go through this." Tucker nodded, his voice hoarse. "I will. I'll do everything I can to make things right." At that moment, Shepherd, as if sensing the tension, gently lifted its head and looked at Tucker. Though still weak, it managed to wag its tail, as if to say it had forgiven him. The sight left everyone in the room silent. Jamal looked at Shepherd and then back at Tucker. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Jamal said, his voice still shaky. "But if Shepherd can, I'll try." Tucker bowed his head, feeling a weight lift from his chest. Thank you, Jamal. I won't let you down. The meeting with Jamal completely transformed Tucker. He began reevaluating everything, from the way he was raised to how he conducted himself at work. Tucker realized that to truly make amends, he needed to take action, not just offer words. He voluntarily attended counseling sessions to confront the deep-seated prejudices within himself. These conversations were not easy, but Tucker was determined to change. He listened to the stories of Black individuals who had faced discrimination, and each story made him more aware of his need to do better. One counselor, Mrs. Henderson, told him, "Change doesn't happen overnight, but recognizing your mistakes and being willing to learn is the most important first step." Tucker began engaging in volunteer activities within the Black community. He helped repair homes, organized life skills workshops, and even volunteered at an animal shelter. Tucker understood that shooting Shepherd wasn't just a mistake against Jamal, but a reflection of his ignorance and lack of connection with the community. During one volunteer event, Tucker saw Jamal again. This time, Jamal didn't look at him with anger. Instead, he gave a faint smile. "I see you're doing good work," Jamal said. "I hope you keep it up." Tucker nodded, feeling a small weight lift from his chest. "I won't stop, Jamal. You've taught me more than I ever expected." After months of recovery, Shepherd was finally strong enough to return to the park. Jamal, his family, and a group of friends from the community organized a small picnic to celebrate Shepherd's return. Shepherd, though not as agile as before, was still excited to play and run on the green grass. Tucker was also invited. At first, he hesitated, but Marcus told him, "You deserve to be here, not because of what you did, but because of the effort you're making to change." During the picnic, Tucker knelt beside Shepherd, gently stroking its head. "Thank you, Shepherd," he said softly. "You've taught me more than I could have ever imagined." At the end of the picnic, Jamal stood up, took a microphone, and said, "We can't change what happened, but we can learn and do better. Shepherd taught me that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means moving forward. I hope our story inspires everyone to think and love one another more." The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus, standing quietly in the corner, felt immense pride not just for Jamal, but for the way the community had come together to grow and change. Tucker was no longer the man he used to be. After countless therapy sessions and community service activities, he realized that change wasn't just about fixing mistakes. It was about committing to living a more meaningful life. But this journey was anything but easy. Tucker continued to face skeptical looks from colleagues and doubt from the community. One morning, Tucker knocked on Marcus's office door. Marcus looked up, surprised to see Tucker standing before him with a resolute expression. "I want to propose a training program specifically for the police force," Tucker began. "The program will focus on cultural awareness, de-escalation techniques, and eliminating bias." Marcus folded his arms and studied Tucker for a moment before responding. "You know this won't be easy, right? There will be pushback, both inside and outside the department." "I know," Tucker replied, "but I believe this is the only way to rebuild the community's trust. I want to do the right thing." A faint smile crossed Marcus's face as he sensed Tucker's sincerity. "All right, let's work together to make this happen." With Marcus's support, Tucker began organizing small workshops for his colleagues. Initially, attendance was sparse. Some officers were skeptical, even mocking his efforts. "You think a few talks can change an entire system?" an older officer asked. "It's not just a few talks," Tucker replied firmly. "It's about how we learn from them and apply what we've learned to our daily work." Gradually, more officers began attending. The training sessions became not only a space for learning but also a forum for open discussion about issues many had long avoided. Tucker shared his own story, his mistakes, the lessons he learned from Jamal and Shepherd, and his journey toward change. His vulnerability and honesty resonated deeply, sparking empathy and a desire for growth among his peers. Meanwhile, Tucker's efforts were starting to gain recognition from the community. One morning, while he was helping repair a house for a family in need, an elderly woman approached him. "You're the officer who shot Shepherd, aren't you?" she asked. Tucker nodded, feeling a wave of embarrassment. "Yes, ma'am. I deeply regret what I did." The woman studied him for a moment, then smiled. "Thank you for changing. We need more people like you." Her words warmed Tucker's heart, as though he was slowly finding his place in the community again. Shepherd grew stronger with each passing day. The loyal dog could now walk around the yard, his tail wagging nonstop whenever Jamal stepped outside. The cheerful barks of Shepherd once again filled the air, bringing warmth and joy back to the family. Jamal decided it was time to take Shepherd back to the park for the first time since the incident. He prepared meticulously, packing toys and a small blanket to spread on the grass. As Shepherd entered the park, all eyes turned toward the dog. Some people recognized him as the Shepherd, the dog that had become a symbol of unity and hope for the town. They smiled, clapped, and even came over to greet Shepherd warmly. Jamal threw a worn rubber ball onto the lush green grass. Despite not having fully regained his strength, Shepherd eagerly chased after it. When he returned with the ball in his mouth, Jamal laughed, feeling as though life had finally returned to normal. "Good job, Shepherd," Jamal said, patting the dog on the head. "We did it." That day in the park, a local photographer captured the moment of Jamal and Shepherd playing together. The photograph, with sunlight streaming through the trees and Jamal's radiant smile, became a symbol of hope and resilience. It was published in newspapers and spread across social media, further sharing their story with the world. While Shepherd continued to recover, Jamal received an invitation from his school to share his story. Nervous yet determined, he prepared a short but meaningful speech with the help of his mother and Marcus. "I've learned that no matter how difficult things get, love and forgiveness can change everything," Jamal said to the crowd of students. "Shepherd forgave the officer, and because of that, I learned how to forgive too. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means moving forward." Jamal's words were met with thunderous applause. He became a source of inspiration not just to his peers but to the entire town. Jamal and Shepherd's story sparked an unprecedented wave of unity in the town. People, regardless of race or background, came together to organize events aimed at eliminating prejudice and promoting harmony. Marcus and Jamal hosted a large event at the park, the place where everything had started. The event, called Day of Hope, was designed to raise funds for animal rescue organizations and activities promoting equality within the community. The whole town participated. Food stalls, children's play areas, and a small stage for musical performances created a lively atmosphere. Jamal and Shepherd were the honored guests of the event. Shepherd, now almost fully recovered, sat by Jamal's side, his eyes bright and his tail wagging nonstop. Tucker also attended the event, feeling for the first time that he was truly part of the community. He stepped onto the stage, standing beside Marcus and Jamal. In a touching moment, Tucker apologized to the entire community. "I made a huge mistake," Tucker said, his voice hoarse. "But thanks to Jamal, Shepherd, and everyone here, I've learned how to be a better person. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make things right." Tucker's words were met with applause. Jamal smiled, feeling a sense of relief as he saw people willing to forgive and give Tucker a chance. At the end of the event, Marcus and Jamal unveiled a small statue erected in the park, depicting Shepherd with his strong posture and high-waving tail. Beneath the statue, an inscription read, "Hope and forgiveness are the greatest strengths." Shepherd stood in front of the statue, his head held high, as if he understood that he had become a special symbol. Jamal bent down, hugged Shepherd, and whispered, "We did it, my friend." Tucker had changed. The feeling of guilt still weighed heavily on his heart. But more and more he felt the transformation within himself. As he participated in community activities, He was not only trying to atone for his mistakes but also learning valuable lessons about fairness, compassion, and courage. After attending the Day of Hope event, Tucker realized that an important part of his journey toward redemption was facing his own fears and anger. One day, he visited an animal rights organization he had volunteered with since Shepherd was treated. There, he met a group of people working to help abused animals. One of the participants, an elderly woman named Margaret, approached Tucker. She looked at him for a long moment before asking, "You're the police officer who shot Shepherd, right?" Tucker felt embarrassed but nodded. "Yes, I am the one." Margaret looked at him for a while, then said, "You caused a great deal of pain, but what have you done since then to make things right?" Tucker slowly replied, his voice calm, "I've done a lot to change. I've attended cultural awareness training, helped the community, and participated in animal protection programs. I know I can't undo what's been done, but I hope I can do good for those I've hurt, both people and animals." Margaret looked at him with eyes that were no longer filled with anger, but with a hint of empathy. "Then I believe you're doing the right thing. We need people like you. Keep going down this path." Tucker felt forgiveness, though it was not complete forgiveness, but at least an opportunity to start again. He nodded and promised he wouldn't stop. A few weeks later, Tucker decided to attend a press conference organized by Jamal's family, where Marcus and equality activists would discuss the changes in the community. This time, Tucker stepped onto the stage with Marcus and Jamal, facing dozens of people waiting to hear their statements. Marcus smiled gently and gestured for Tucker to speak. Tucker stood still for a moment, his heart full of emotion. He took a deep breath, looked at the crowd, and said, "I'm standing here today to apologize. I caused pain to Jamal, Shepherd, and their family. My actions were unforgivable, and I know I've hurt a community. But I want you all to know that I have learned this difficult lesson. I will do everything I can to make amends, not just with Shepherd, but with all of you. We all have a responsibility to each other, and I will continue to work to rebuild the trust one broke." Tucker paused for a moment to regain his composure, then continued, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to change. I promise I will never make this mistake again." The crowd was silent for a moment, then erupted in loud applause. Some people began to stand up and clap in support, showing that they believed in Tucker's change. Jamal stood beside him, looking at Tucker with eyes full of forgiveness, though not forgetting that his actions had left deep scars. But in that moment, Jamal knew that forgiveness was the key for the whole community to move forward. Tucker continued to strive to prove that he had changed. He kept attending training sessions, supporting community programs, and working to be a role model for his colleagues. Although not everyone accepted him easily, it was Tucker's concrete actions that served as the clearest proof of his transformation. Gradually, the community began to see Tucker not only as the one who made a mistake but also as someone striving to correct it and do right. He became part of the positive changes within the community, not only in the police force but also in the hearts of those around him. The story of Jamal, Shepherd, and Tucker concluded a challenging yet deeply meaningful chapter. While there are still difficulties and challenges ahead, they have risen together, finding strength in love, forgiveness, and hope. But this story doesn't end here. It stands as proof that, despite the wounds of the past, we can still change and start anew. One beautiful morning, Marcus and Jamal's family decided to hold a memorial for Shepherd at the park, where everything began. The ceremony was not only an opportunity to honor a dog that had helped them overcome so much, but also a time to celebrate unity and love in the community. Jamal stood before the crowd, his eyes shining bright, his voice filled with determination. Shepherd was not just a dog. It was a symbol of strength, perseverance, and forgiveness. It taught us that, even when we face difficulties and pain, with love and hope, we can overcome. The crowd listened in silence as Jamal spoke. Afterward, they all placed a wreath at the Shepherd statue, a symbol of unity and love. Each person silently thanked Shepherd for everything it had done. That day, Jamal and Tucker sat together on a bench, observing the surroundings. Shepherd lay next to them, his eyes still bright, though it no longer ran around as it once did. It was still happy. Jamal smiled softly and said, "We did it, right?" Tucker nodded, offering a gentle smile. "Yes, Jamal, we did." Their story was not an ending, but a new beginning, a journey that would continue to evolve and progress. The community had come together, those once divided by ignorance now working together to build a fairer future. And throughout that journey, love and forgiveness were the keys that helped everyone overcome the challenges ahead.